I never imagined waking up one morning to find my marriage quietly unraveling. It crept in like fog rolling over the harbor in Seattle, slow and steady, until everything familiar felt distant and blurred. 12 years with Rachel, and at some point our shared life had split into parallel routines. She stayed up later scrolling on her phone, rose before dawn for her runs, spoke less over dinner, and smiled even less when our eyes met. We still occupied the same house on the edge of the city, but the warmth that once filled it had faded into polite silence. One evening around 10:45, I walked into our bedroom and saw her lying on her stomach, phone propped under her chin. The glow from the screen lit her face with a soft, private smile, the kind I hadn't seen aimed at me in months. I stood there for a moment, watching. Then I asked, as casually as I could manage, "Who's got you smiling so late?" She didn't flinch or hide the phone quickly. That small detail told me more than words ever could. She simply tilted the screen away slightly and replied, "It's just Michael from the team at work. He's asking about the quarterly figures. Nothing exciting." Her voice sounded too breezy, too practiced. I nodded anyway. "Okay," I said, and headed to the shower. When I returned, the smile had vanished. The phone lay face down on the nightstand, and any chance of real conversation had disappeared with it. 2 nights later, she mentioned she'd be working late again. She'd used that excuse before, but this time there was an extra edge in her tone, as if she needed me to accept it without question. She returned home close to midnight, carrying the faint scent of a perfume she usually reserved for special evenings out. She went straight to the bathroom without much greeting. I stared at her phone resting on the nightstand. Months of ignored instincts had grown too loud to dismiss any longer. I wasn't proud of it, but I picked up the device. There was a muted conversation thread labeled simply with the letter M. The messages were short, teasing, playful, lines that had no place inside a marriage. One joke referenced last time, in a way she had clearly tried to erase. The bathroom door opened. Rachel stepped out, towel wrapped around her damp hair. I set the phone down as if it had scorched my fingers. She looked at me. "Something wrong?" I kept my voice even. "Anything I should know about?" She didn't hesitate. "Ryan, you're overthinking again. It's completely harmless. Just work chatter." She said it so calmly, so smoothly. That was the exact moment I understood something fundamental had broken between us. After that night, I stopped guessing and started observing. No dramatic accusations, no heated arguments, no constant questions. I simply paid closer attention. Rachel began heading to the gym almost every evening, despite barely having touched weights or treadmills in the past few years. She bought new outfits, subtle changes, but noticeably sharper, and started wearing that same perfume more often, the one saved for anniversaries and date nights. Her phone remained constantly in her hand, screen always dimmed, always locked, always turned face down when she set it aside. One morning, she left the house earlier than usual, claiming she needed extra time to prepare for an important client presentation. I watched from the window as her car pulled out of the driveway and turned right, heading in a direction that led nowhere near her office downtown. She never glanced back. That same afternoon, I met up with Tyler, my closest friend since college. He worked in cybersecurity and had zero patience for excuses or sugarcoating. Over burgers, he asked bluntly, "You think she's seeing someone?" "I think she's lying," I answered. "Usually the same thing," he said, wiping his hands. Then he leaned in. "Have you checked her cloud backups? A lot of people delete messages from the phone, but forget the copies sitting safely in the cloud." He walked me through the simple steps to access the shared family account from my laptop. It wasn't difficult, just something I had never needed to do until now. That night, after Rachel had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room with my laptop open. Opening her archived files felt like lifting old wallpaper and discovering rot spreading underneath. Quiet, hidden, and impossible to unsee once revealed. There were screenshots that no longer existed on her actual phone. Entire deleted threads between her and Michael. Messages like, "Can't stop thinking about the way you looked last night. Same place tomorrow." And her reply, "It was worth every lie I told to get there." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply closed the laptop and sat in the darkness until the clock passed 2 a.m. when I finally stood up, Two things were crystal clear. First, I was finished offering her the benefit of any doubt. Second, confronting her immediately would only lead to more carefully crafted stories, and blame shifted back onto me. I needed undeniable proof, something no amount of smooth talking could erase, and her upcoming birthday, just over 2 weeks away, suddenly felt like the perfect stage for the truth to finally come out. I contacted an old acquaintance named Victor 2 days later. He had become a respected private investigator in Seattle. My message was brief. Need your help with something personal. Can we meet? We sat at a small cafe by the waterfront. I slid him a folder with the printed cloud screenshots. Victor reviewed them quietly, eyebrow lifting at the incriminating lines. How far do you want to take this? He asked. Absolute proof, I said. Photos times locations. Nothing that can be denied. Give me a week, he replied. Maybe less. That evening I suggested takeout and a movie. Rachel curled up next to me like old times. Her warmth felt empty now. It only showed how natural lying had become for her that Victor's first update arrived the next afternoon. A photo of Rachel leaving her office at 4:20 p.m. Though she had told me she'd work until 7 the following day, came a short video. Rachel entering a bar in Belltown. 20 minutes later, Michael joined her. They sat close, laughing, touching, body language that betrayed everything. Victor called that night. They went from the bar to the Meridian Hotel, checked in separately, met at the elevator. I have photos. Sending them now. By day 5 the evidence was complete. Victor captured them leaving the hotel together. Rachel fixing her hair in a car reflection. Michael adjusting his shirt. I watched every clip alone in silence. Headphones on. No outbursts. Just cold clarity. Victor confirmed. It's an ongoing affair. Repeated meetings. I know, I said. Now we end it. Rachel's birthday was the next Friday. She mentioned it casually. Don't plan anything big. I'll probably have to stay late at the office. I looked at her over my coffee. No problem. We'll keep it simple. She smiled like she had won the evening for herself, that I arranged everything with quiet precision. I booked a private room at her family's favorite Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. I called her parents, Richard and Margaret, telling them I wanted a surprise dinner to lift her spirits. They were touched and promised to come. I invited her brother Caleb and our mutual friends Sophia and Derek. Everyone accepted happily. The key conversation was with Natalie, Michael's wife. I found her online and messaged. I think our spouses are involved. I have proof. Can we talk? We met at a quiet park near Green Lake. When I showed her Victor's evidence, she stayed calm. How long? A few months at least. She nodded. What do you need? Your presence at the dinner, I said. Just being there will say enough. She agreed, by weeks and every detail was set. A perfect surprise on the night Rachel thought she had total freedom. On her birthday, Rachel stepped out in a sleek black dress from the hotel photos. She looked polished and excited, too excited for supposed overtime. You look nice, I said. Thanks. Where are we going? Just dinner. Low key. She didn't ask more. That silence confirmed everything. We arrived at 7. I led her down the hallway. She expected a table for 2. When I opened the private room door, the group stood and called surprise. Her parents, Caleb, Sophia, and Derek surrounded a table with cake and balloons. Rachel froze. Her smile faltered, then returned forced. Wow, I wasn't expecting this, she said, voice unsteady. Everyone hugged her warmly. Margaret gave a gift. Richard patted her back. Caleb took photos. I pulled out her chair. Happy birthday, Rachel. She sat slowly, still off balance. The first half of dinner felt normal. Food arrived, glasses clinked, conversation flowed. Rachel laughed too loud and drank too fast. Halfway through the meal, I tapped my glass. May I have everyone's attention for a moment? I said calmly. The room quieted. Rachel looked up, confused. I continued calmly. I want to say something about truth and timing. I took a small tablet from my jacket and connected it to the screen on the wall. The first photo appeared instantly. Rachel walking into the Meridian Hotel with Michael. The room went dead silent. Another image followed, Rachel and Michael leaving hours later. Then the clear shot of her fixing her hair in the reflection of a parked car While Michael waited nearby, Margaret gasped. Richard stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Caleb covered his mouth. Sophia whispered, "Oh my God." Rachel's face drained of color. "Ryan, stop. Please turn that off. This isn't." Before she could finish, the door to the private room opened quietly. Natalie stepped inside. "I'm Michael's wife," she said, her voice steady but quiet. Rachel's expression collapsed. Her breathing became shallow. She reached for my arm. "Ryan, please don't do this here." I stepped back. "I'm not doing anything. You did." The room erupted. Margaret started crying. Richard demanded answers. Caleb stared at his sister in disbelief. Sophia and Derek looked between us, shocked. Natalie stood calmly near the door, her presence saying everything words couldn't. Rachel tried to speak over the noise. "It wasn't serious, it just happened. Please, everyone listen." But no one was listening the way she wanted. The evidence was undeniable. The photos stayed on the screen like frozen accusations. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The truth had done the work. After a few minutes of chaos, I stood up. "I think that's enough for tonight." I walked out of the room, without looking back. Behind me, the shouting continued. Rachel's family confronting her, Natalie making a quiet phone call. I moved down the hallway, through the restaurant lobby, and into the cool Seattle night. That same evening I packed a backpack with clothes and important documents and drove to a short-term rental apartment across town near the lake. I wanted distance, not reminders. Rachel started calling before I even unpacked. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then the messages began. "We need to talk. Ryan, please answer. Let me explain." The next morning she showed up at the building. I opened the door, but didn't let her inside. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared. "Please listen," she begged. "It wasn't serious. It just happened." My voice stayed even. "It happened multiple times." She flinched. "I know I ruined everything, but we can fix this. I'll quit my job. I'll block him. I'll do whatever it takes." "Rachel," I said, "I'm not interested in fixing it. I'm done." She shook her head. "You blindsided me. Why in front of everyone? You earned that moment long before I arranged it." She stepped back, hand over her mouth. I closed the door gently. She didn't knock again that day. Over the next week her world unraveled quickly. Her parents distanced themselves. Richard left me a voicemail saying he was sorry for what she had done. Margaret cried every time Rachel tried to speak to her. Caleb told her he needed space, that AT work. Someone reported the relationship. HR called her in. Rumors spread fast. Her projects dried up. Michael didn't stand by her either. After Natalie confronted him with the same evidence, he requested a transfer to another office in Portland. He left without saying goodbye to Rachel. I hired a lawyer, and the divorce moved forward smoothly. The proof left no room for negotiation. Rachel cried through several meetings, but I stayed focused and calm. When the judge finalized the papers, she looked at me one last time and whispered, "I never thought you'd actually leave." I nodded. That was the mistake. I walked out of the courthouse feeling neither triumphant nor bitter, just free. 3 months passed before Rachel asked to meet in person. Her message was short. One conversation. No excuses, no drama. "I need to say something." I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We met at a small cafe near the waterfront, the same place we used to visit on quiet Sunday mornings, when life felt simpler. I arrived first and sat by the window. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller, tired, like someone carrying too many sleepless nights. Her usual confidence was gone. She sat down slowly. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "Say what you need to." Rachel took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm not asking for anything back. I know that part is over. I need you to know I'm sorry. Not the way I said before. This time I mean it." I stayed quiet, letting her continue. "I destroyed a marriage you were still trying to protect," she said, voice fragile but steady. "I lied because I thought lies were easier than honesty. I blamed you to avoid blaming myself. When you exposed everything, I hated you for it. But now I see you didn't embarrass me. You revealed what I had become." She paused, eyes down. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I've had time to sit with it. My dad barely talks to me anymore. Mom cries every time she sees me. Caleb said he needs distance. Everyone knows at work. I'm being transferred to a smaller team. The rumors follow me everywhere. She looked up, exhausted. I know I can't undo any of it. I just didn't want silence to be the last thing between us. I leaned back. I don't hate you, Rachel. I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness isn't the same as trust, and trust isn't rebuilt with one apology. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't break. I understand. I hope you figure things out, I said. Truly. She nodded, stood up, and walked out of the cafe, without looking back. It was the first honest decision she had made in a long time. After she left, I stayed a while longer. No heavy feeling in my chest, no tension in my shoulders, just quiet. Real closure doesn't come with fireworks. It feels like breathing normally again. A year after that birthday night, I happened to walk past the same restaurant. I wasn't planning to. I was returning from a meeting and turned the corner. There it was, the doorway, the hallway, the memory that I stopped on the sidewalk for a moment, waiting to feel something sharp. Anger, regret, sadness. Nothing came. Just a quiet awareness that I was no longer the same man who had walked out of that building with his marriage in pieces behind him, that I lived in a smaller apartment now, close enough to the lake that I could hear the water at night. My days had become simple. Gym in the morning, focused work, and evenings volunteering at a support group Victor had introduced me to. Men navigating divorce, betrayal, and starting over. Some arrived shattered, some angry, most lost. I understood every version that I shared pieces of my story when it helped. Never the dramatic details, just the parts that mattered. How staying calm kept me sane. How making a clear plan gave me control. How walking away when the truth was undeniable gave me my life back. One evening after a meeting, I ran into Olivia, a graphic designer who worked in the same building. We had exchanged small talk a few times at the gym cafe. Nothing heavy. That night we walked out together. Heading home? She asked. Yeah. Long day. She laughed softly. Aren't they all? We talked for a few blocks. Easy, light conversation. No pressure. She didn't pry into my past, and I didn't feel the need to explain anything at the corner where our paths split. She gave a small smile. See you around, Ryan. Yeah, I said. See you. It wasn't a dramatic spark or a movie moment. It was simple, normal, steady. After everything that had happened, normal felt surprisingly good. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment and looked out at the city lights, reflecting on the dark water of the lake. The man who once checked Rachel's phone in quiet panic now checked nothing except his own direction in life. That I realized something important standing there. You can't stop someone from betraying you, but you decide who you become afterward. And for the first time in a long time, that thought didn't feel heavy. It felt like freedom. A year after that birthday dinner, everything had settled into a new, quieter rhythm. The anger had faded. The questions had stopped. What remained was space, room to breathe, to choose, to move forward without carrying the weight of someone else's choices. That I kept attending the support group, listening more than speaking. The men there reminded me that healing isn't loud or fast. It's showing up, week after week, until one day you notice the knots in your chest have loosened. I shared just enough of my story to help when it fit. How observation replaced suspicion, how evidence replaced arguments, and how walking away with dignity replaced the desperate need to fix what was already broken. Olivia and I kept crossing paths. Small conversations turned into longer walks. Coffee after work became dinners that felt easy and unforced. She never asked for the full story of my marriage, and I never felt the need to unload it. With her, things stayed light, respectful, and honest from the start. After years of navigating hidden messages and rehearsed excuses, simple honesty felt like fresh air. One quiet evening, months later, we sat on a bench by the lake. The water moved gently under the lights. She turned to me and said, "You seem like someone who's figured out what matters." I smiled slightly. Took a while. But yeah, she didn't push. She didn't need to. That was part of what made it work. That Rachel's life continued on its own path. I heard through mutual friends that she had transferred to a smaller role at work. Her family kept their distance for a long time. Eventually some contact returned, but it was careful and limited. She never reached out to me again after that cafe meeting. I took that as her final honest choice, that I didn't feel triumphant about any of it. I didn't wish her harm. I simply felt finished with that chapter. Looking back now, the night of the birthday dinner feels less like a dramatic explosion and more like the moment the lights finally came on in a room that had been dim for too long. The truth didn't destroy me. It freed me. I still walk past that restaurant sometimes. The memory no longer stings. It's just a place now, an old landmark on a road I no longer travel. My days are my own. Mornings at the gym, focused hours at work, evenings that belong to whatever feels right. No more scanning for clues. No more second-guessing smiles or late nights. Just forward movement. And on nights like this, standing by the window with the city lights on the water, I understand the deepest part of the story. Betrayal changes you, but it doesn't define you. Unless you let it. I chose not to let it. That choice brought me here. Breathing easier, standing taller, living lighter, and that, more than anything, feels like the real ending.